Hello and welcome to Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. Now in our 5th year, bringing you topics on the mind-body-spirit connection and the tools and techniques to awaken you to the higher states of consciousness. I am Dr. J, your host, and my co-host is Deirdre Leighton. Although she's not here today, she's busy moving from Calgary to Nanaimo and very, very busy. But as our show goes on, please do share and post. Together we bring you grounded metaphysics where the spiritual rubber hits the road, real life teachings and applications that are pertinent and relevant to you. Here you can breathe fresh air of real consciousness education while avoiding the hype and the fascination. We are all about assisting you to empower your life through understanding your true spiritual nature. So come aboard our beam of light and enlighten your load as we travel the waves of knowledge and wisdom for the next hour. I don't know if it's going to be a full hour or not. I was so hoping that Deirdre would be able to join us today, but she has been a busy bee over the last few months, as we all have been. Such a time of change. You know, I'm Dr. J. I'm your host. I've been your host for a long time now. And I really enjoy doing these programs on Light News Radio and, of course, bringing you on. And there was a time when, of course, we were just internet radio without the visual, and we would have guests on the show, and we'll return to that later as we invest in more better and fancy software and hardware. So this is an interesting time for us. I remember really starting to open spiritually around 1987 or so, and then kind of getting caught up in the fervor of my own spiritual path. I was so happy, like I was a kid in a candy store. There was so much to explore and so much to know. And there was a kind of an imminence, an importance, an urgency that I felt coming on around 1991, 1992, which for some of you seems like a long time ago. Maybe some of you didn't even exist at that time. So I was talking then about the Mayan calendar, and I had been studying it quite a bit, several books, and then eventually in 2005 I started taking people to the Yucatan, Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, to study the cosmology of the Maya. And going back to the 90s when I was just studying, there was this urgency that things were going to be changing much more quickly than ever before. And I kind of got caught up in it, in that I was so fascinated about how things were so rapidly evolving. Like the example I give with the little red ball, you know, it bounces on each successive bounce. It's not as high, but it's faster, so it's bounce, blah, 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 like that. And the Mayan calendar talked about how every calendar that engaged, there were 9 underworld calendars, the longest one 16.4 billion years, that when each one engaged, things would be 20 times faster, but it would also be a shorter time between intervals as well. So each interval was faster, but the time between intervals was faster too. So I felt this imminence of, you know, oh, we got to get ready, we got to be prepared. We have to pray, we have to meditate. Now here it is after 2012, and of course most of us missed the end of the world. I'm sure you missed the catastrophes and the apocalypse. Yeah, me too. Anyway, people kind of felt like, oh, well, that's over, there's nothing to worry about. And yet now look around you and look at the politics, look at business, look at science, look at academia, look at social life, look at social media networking, and look at how we are in this artificial world of everything being so rapid. It has to be so quick. How many times have you been driving your car and perhaps pull up to a stoplight and you look to your left and you see that person staring down at their lap? You look to your right and you see that person staring down at their lap. Well, they're not happy just looking at their lap. They're looking at their phones, right? A constant influx of information. And so I wanted today's show to be about Easter, because it is a time of renewal. And, you know, when you think about it, here we are, most of us are 30 or beyond who are watching this show. And we've come to a point where we say, oh, those young people, they're just not like we were. They have changed so much, or there's so much this or so much that. And of course, years ago, 2,000 years ago, philosophers were saying the same things about their children. And then those children today that grow up, maybe they're 6 or 7 or 8, having grown up with an iPad and an iPhone and so forth, social media networking, that maybe in 30 years from now, they're going to say, can you imagine the kids of today and those holograms? They have no respect. So, the thing about Easter, it's a co-opted holiday. We call it Easter. We have the Easter bunny, and we have the appropriate complementary colors for this time of year because spring brings renewal. But, Easter is really a fertility festival about the rights of life, about life springing forth, about, the seed having everything it requires in order to become what it was meant to be. And yet it already is. The analogy is when the rose is a rose, when is it a rose? When it's a bare root, when it's just putting forth little shoots, when it has buds, when it is flowered. It's always the same thing. But what we tend to worry about is what we're becoming instead of who we already are. And so Easter brings this idea through the fertility of renewal, the rebirth, the coming forth, the Christed presence, Christ rising from the dead. Well, if you go on Google, there's a nice little paragraph that goes, Ishtar was the former name given to Easter, but Ishtar is the Akkadian counterpart of the West Semitic goddess Astarte. Inanna, an important goddess in the Sumerian pantheon, came to be identified with Ishtar, but it is uncertain whether Inanna is also of Semitic origin or whether, as is more likely, her similarity to Ishtar caused the two to be identified. So, in different realms, the idea of rebirth, of fertility, of the fertile nature of that which can bring forth life is celebrated, and it was truly celebrated in ancient cultures. And today it has devolved into chocolate Easter bunnies and Easter egg hunts, and I think it's important for us to really get back into what is the point of renewal. And I joke about it, I like Mark Twain, the American humorist. He said, quitting smoking's easy. I've done it thousands of times. But what he's really saying is you can choose, and you can choose again, and you can choose again, and you can choose again. So it's not as though we don't care because we know that we can choose. It is that sometimes we get into these patterns where our spirit nudges us and says, okay, that pattern worked for you for a while, but now it's no longer working. And so something in your life must shift, and it's time for a renewal. Now, I'm not saying that we have to wait. Like, for instance, this year, April 21st, 2019, is our Easter Sunday in the United States and elsewhere in the world. But it's not like you have to wait until spring in order to make conscious decisions to renew yourself. But one of the really cool things about being a human being is that we do have this opportunity to choose, and we can choose again, and we can choose again and again. So if you really give it some thought, you can come up with all kinds of marvelous ways to reinvent yourself. You can say, well, just because I always have this reaction when that particular person walks into the room, this time I'm going to choose my response instead of my reaction, how I will treat that person, how I will regard that person, how I will respect them, how I will respond to them. And let's say you flub it up pretty good. When the person comes into the room, you go, oh my gosh, I went back into that same old habit. But at the same time, when I look at what is the real spiritual juice in a lifetime, what is it? I think it's more important to know it's the effort to change. Maybe not the change, but what you do to enact the change. The space in between your thoughts. the space in between the person walking into the room and the reaction and the contemplation of taking a moment and saying, well, now, wait a minute, just because that person walks into the room and I always reacted this way, that's the magic elixir. That's Easter. That's the renewal. That's the rebirth. That's you choosing to have a different response. And so I wanted to take a moment to embrace our own humanity in that sometimes we get locked into these cycles, into these ways of behaving. And granted, sometimes it's really comfortable. Like sometimes we actually manipulate the situation around us so that we don't have to face certain problems. And that's simply the avoidance of suffering or the avoidance of uncomfortability. And so many teachers will tell you, says, well, you know, in order to really grow, you have to go outside your comfort zone into that uncomfortable, unfamiliar area if you really want to grow. So you have to be stimulated in order to grow. And to me, the spiritual nature that is you and I will always set up the situation and the circumstances so that we can grow, so that we can be in that space of uncomfortability, but within that space, it gives you the opportunity for real inner growth. Imagine what it's like, every one of us to harbor a certain fear, a certain doubt, a certain trepidation about something. And then in the next moment, to let it go. Never bother you again, never come up, completely neutral, no effect whatsoever. I mean, what would that be like? Can you imagine? And so, as we make determinations in our lives, as the spiritual teachers talk to us about inner focus, concentration, intuition, and faith, as you apply those qualities in measure, your own internal structure does change. The subconscious does change. And I recognize how difficult it can be. There's a wonderful documentary that I suggest to all my students called The Yogis of Tibet. And it talks about, in the Eastern traditions of the inner science, of the inner mind, and about how beginning meditation and taming the mind is like taming a raging elephant. And so what the practitioners talk about is you just start taming the elephant one by one, little by little. You don't try to do it all at once. But for some of us, it seems like such a gargantuan task, we don't even really want to start. Sometimes we don't even know where to start. And one of the places we can start the renewal process of what Easter represents is by simply being good to ourselves. I mean, if I was to ask you, if you could count how many times a day a negative self-criticism crosses the field of your mind, like, oh, you're really not good at that, or, oh, you'd probably fail, or, oh, that's just something people really don't like about you. I mean, could you count them up? Now, let's say the next day, a negative pattern crosses your mind, and at that moment, you say, caught you. I caught you. And you then respond to the thought, and you say, no, I am a good person. I am pure in my heart. I am loving. Even if the negative thought returns to pester you from time to time, the very act of catching that thought goes back to the spiritual juice. That is the effort. That is the success. That is the measure of one changing the way the mind even works, how you even think. And sometimes it's very subtle, because let's say that from day to day, when a negative thought comes, you very devotedly change your mind, change your thoughts, and you think nothing has happened. But over time, gradually, the patterns do shift. They do change. And this is a rebirth. This is a coming forth. Remember that whatever you need, you already have. And I'm sure that those of you that are listening to this have heard this a million times. But it really is true. It's like the seed has everything that it needs to be what it is, but it's already that, but it's within the seed. Sounds like a Zen koan, doesn't it? I mean, if you think, for those of you that have been to Northern California, to the giant sequoia trees. Now, some of these trees are 106 feet in circumference at the base, 106 feet around. And I don't know how tall the ones are in the Sierras, but they have to be at least 150 feet tall. I know the ones over near Crescent City on the Pacific coastline in Northern California, I know those can get up to 300 feet, a football field. And yet, did you know the seeds of those trees are about 1 millimeter long? That's 39 1/1000ths of an inch. I know, I used to be a machinist. 39 1/1000ths of an inch. That's not much. And yet, from that little seed, that is how it becomes the giant sequoia. And sequoias are neat because as they grow, they look like any other tree in the forest until many years later they start actually looking like a sequoia. And the bark can be about 2 feet thick. And did you know that those seeds really only propagate when there's a forest fire? That it takes the forest fire to make the pine cones let go of the seeds so that it can drop into the rich ash that has burnt, providing the fertilizer for the seed to grow. So sometimes we need a fire under our seats in life in order for us to put forth new seeds that creates the fertilizer so that the seeds can grow. I know we need to heal my analogies, I'm sure. But if you think about it, in rebirth and renewal, we always have that choice. The universe will sometimes give us a helping hand or a helping foot, depending on the severity of how much the change is needed. But think of you as a spirit are just like the seed. You have everything you need to be what you came to be. Just give it the proper conditions. If the seed has the right telluric energies, electrical energies in the ground, if it has the right ley line energies, if it has the right nutrients in the soil, the right water, the right air, the right fire, which is sunlight, those 4 elements are there to nurture the seed so that it can be more of what it already is. So how is it when you put a seed in the ground, it knows to grow straight up? How does that happen? Because there is a quality, a consciousness within that little seed, little pumpkin seed, little watermelon seed, that somehow knows gravity. It somehow knows how to proceed forth to the light. And I would suggest to you that you and I know exactly the same thing. We know exactly what it takes to proceed forth to the light because we are light. We're not separate from the light. There is no separation. There's no such thing. And yet we tend to think that we are separate, that we must strive, and that we must rapidify, that we have to do things much faster than we ever have before. And to what end? Nowadays, if you look on your cell phone, which is really just a computer that has a phone in it, but it's basically a computer, imagine how you can look up some of the greatest literary works ever produced. And someone, somewhere, took the time to digitize those great works, and to put them in a format that you could see on your phone. Isn't that something? And so this is what we've created. We're living in an age where it's possible for us to gain all of this incredible wisdom, all of this incredible knowledge, these incredible men and women, thinkers and spiritually evolved people, scientists, business people, politicians. And yes, there's so many world servers from so many different avenues that we can tap into now through the internet that gives us the ability to gain much more knowledge. But information is not knowledge. You have to cull through the information to make it knowledge. And knowledge is not wisdom. You have to use that knowledge over time with experience in order to gain wisdom. And wisdom is not realization. Realization comes when the wisdom is filtered through the mind of awareness. And awareness is a higher state of being, not limited to time or space, a qualitative state that we all have. Doesn't matter who you are, where you live, your level of education, male, female, somewhere in between, doesn't matter. We are the seed wherein the universe is already contained within us. And as we apply, as we nurture ourselves, as we give ourselves those positive thoughts, as we interject the power of our will every once in a while by saying, okay, well, I've responded that way in the past, and just because I have doesn't mean I have to now. As we do that, we fundamentally grow towards the sun, just like the seed does. And that little tiny seed that came from the sequoia, given sufficient time and the resources that it requires, becomes this giant being, this largest living thing on the planet from a seed that is a millimeter long. Amazing. And yet, how many of you and I think of ourselves as powerful? Well, Easter is a cool time of year because it's meant to help us focus on our own fertility. Your mind is a fertile place. Your heart is a fertile place. Your soul is a fertile place. It gives us the opportunity to grow by nurturing ourselves. So what feeds your soul? What feeds your heart? What feeds your mind? Is it similar to the foods that feed your body? How do you treat yourself? How do you allow others to treat you? We are not separate from what we seek. We live in oneness, and there's many ways to look at that. I know that many of us come from different religious backgrounds, and yet at the same time, in the way I look at it, is we're never separate from what we seek. So in that regard, you always have a choice. You always have the ability to choose, and to choose again, and to choose again, and to choose again. So I wonder if there's anybody on today. Sorry, I'm just touching buttons here. I wonder if there's anybody on today that we might want to bring on the show. Now let me just take a look here. And I wanted to go through a couple of talking points too. One of the things that I've been renewing in my life is I've been teaching integrative chakra therapy now for 20 years, and I've come to the conclusion that it's something I just love to do, to teach this unique method of energy medicine based on my theory of dominant chakras, that I want to keep bringing it to the world as a valuable, viable, and effective way of being a conduit of real healing. And I'm blessed because I have these amazing graduates and instructors now who do this work as well as I do, who each in their own right are highly developed, highly accomplished people. And that in itself is such a blessing. So I just wanted to mention that, for my own life and my own rebirth, is this renewal and this recommitment to the path of integrative chakra therapy, or ICT as I like to call it, and to teach it here in the United States and in Canada. Both are my home now. I've been coming to Canada. This coming September of this year will be 20 years that I've been coming to Calgary and, of course, Vancouver as well in Canada. And spirit willing, I hope to do much more. So I'm really loving doing the teaching and the instructing and setting up the courses. And, of course, we've got new students coming in here and there. We start new classes every year. And I suppose I should say our website is www.lightnews.org, www.lightnews.org. And there's a lot of other things that are happening too. I don't want to bore you with sales pitches. There's just a lot going on between flower readings, this 7-module course I've created online called Awakening the Master Within, online tarot. Would you like to learn how to do the tarot in one night online from wherever you are? So these are some of the courses that we've got that are coming, along with other workshops like astral travel workshops, past life workshops, flower readings. Flower readings are so cool. This last February, I've been doing this last February, I should say, I've been doing flower readings for 27 years. Here, Canada, Mexico, Germany, Switzerland, Japan, and it has just been great. So yeah, we have a lot of things in the offing that we do here at Light News Institute, and our goal has always been very simple. It's been to help empower the individual and to take the mystery out of metaphysics. So to that extent, everything we do is aimed at helping you to empower yourself, to help you to be the externalization of what that seed represents, to help you in Easter time to renew, recommit, to recertify yourself as a being of light, but not in a poetic way only, not in an airy-fairy feel-good way only, but in the real practical sense of the word, an awakened person spiritually. So, I hope you will take that to heart and apply. I know we all have different teachings that we follow, and that those are very important. You will bring the teachings to you that will serve you best. But those teachings are kind of like the fertilizer, the manure that sustains you. Although I can hear some of you snickering like he said manure. But sometimes it's the fertilizer that, really helps us to grow. Not just the water and the sunlight and the happy words, but, some of the stuff that we go through, really, really help us a lot. And I want to say hi to Kathy Kay and Albert, and I wanted to say hi to my amazing daughter, Kimmy. Presence when she has time. She's a very busy young mom, and doesn't always have the time to watch the show when we come on at 3 o'clock.
He called us.
And there she is. There's Kimmy and my granddaughter Brielle. Hi.
Hi, how are you guys doing? A lot of audio overload.
That's nice.
That's nice.
So you are on Facebook Live, going out all over the world right now. And I get the honor of being Grandpa. Yeah, so how was your day, Brielle? Awesome. So are you ready for Easter? Uh-huh. And does that involve an Easter hunt? Wow. I got a lot of audio feedback. Oh, and they're gone. How lovely. How lovely. Hi, Greg. Good afternoon. I should call you son, huh? My son-in-law. It made you smile, didn't I? Well, how wonderful to see Kimmy and Greg and Trenton and Brielle and Ava Rose. And we have Sharon White on, and and Brielle just loves this. I'm so happy. So at any rate, being the proud grandfather of 6 of my own children and 1 who is Greg's son Trenton, 7 grandkids in all is an amazing blessing in itself. And that's part of my renewal, is to recommit and rededicate myself to the wonder of family. Without family, really, what is this all about? And that's just so important for us to be able to focus in this time of renewal, rebirth, coming forth, the time of recommitment, So I think I just want to sum up and say that, no matter what's going on in your life, the power that made you is the same power that heals you. And that you always have the ability to make really good choices for yourself. You always do. You always have the opportunity to choose differently. Just because something angered you before doesn't mean it has to every time. You have a wonderful mind. You have a great heart. You can think positively. You can say, well, just because I thought this last time doesn't mean I have to react the same way every time. That's called self-empowerment. That's you making conscious choices to be more in your power and to love yourself even more. And I don't mean love yourself in a funny way. I mean to treat yourself well, to avoid negative, harsh self-criticism. So, beyond the chocolate Easter bunnies, which are wonderful, by the way, and beyond the Easter egg hunt, this is the time of spring where everything that is loaded, like that beautiful seed, is just loaded with vitality and life, and it's just waiting to come forth, and giving yourself all the proper nutrients, family, friends, love, spirituality, good food, and the sunshine of the tremendous love that you have in your heart is going to help you grow and blossom more into what you already are. Well, I have great faith in you. It is my pleasure to be able to do these radio programs. I hope you'll have an opportunity to like and share them. We do archive these programs. Our website is lightnews.org, lightnews.org. But we also archive these programs on YouTube under Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. So if you ever want to see some of the old shows or see Deirdre and I going back and forth in repartee, which we are known for, which is a lot of fun, just go on to the YouTube page and you'll find us there. And there's lots of other things that we're doing. Too much to list here, and I don't want to bore you with too much details, but there's lots of great things that are coming and that we will be doing. So I think I'm going to end it there. Unless some of you want to post any questions, I'll give you about 60 seconds if you want to post any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to start winding it down here. Just a reminder that the first and third Monday of every month, we have free energy healing in Encinitas, which is San Diego area, California, at the California Institute for Human Science. And then the second and fourth Monday of every month, we have free healing in Calgary, Canada, although this coming Monday is considered an Easter Monday holiday, so there won't be any this coming Monday, April 22nd. We also have free healing in San Jose on the fourth Thursday of the month. We're also starting free healing in a place called Camrose, which is 180 miles north of Calgary in Canada, where we'll be offering free healing and energy balancing to the public. So Light News and Integrative Chakra Therapy and Light News Institute and everything we're doing is blossoming just like Easter, just like spring. So it's a wonderful time to be alive. So I want to thank you so much for listening to Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. I'm Dr. J, and please say hello in your hearts to Deirdre and her successful move to Vancouver Island. And remember, our website and our calendar for our calendar of events is at lightnews.org, lightnews.org, or call 877-242-5721. 877-242-5721. And as always, may the principles of harmlessness and compassion be the ever-present, ever-constant guide of your every thought, of your every intention, and of your every action. And so it is, and so it will be. It is done. Stay attuned, everyone, and thank you for watching.